So we want to get started again here and now hear from our local public officials. And so I want to welcome up to the stage Mayor Tom Bernard of North Adams, Mayor Linda Tiger of Pittsfield, and District Attorney Andrew Harrington. We're going to structure this section of the forum in the same way as our first forum with our state elected officials. I'm going to ask each of our local officials to take 5 or 6 minutes to share their comments and ideas with you, and then we'll have some time for questions from the audience. And thank you very much. A little bit long. So please, Andrea, whenever you're ready, please kick us off.
Good morning. So my name is Andrea Harrington. I am the district attorney for Berkshire County. I'd like to thank BCAC for inviting me to participate this morning into Williams College for hosting this really amazing, wonderful forum that I think is really going to help to catapult us into a much brighter future working together as a community on these really tough issues. So let's have a round of applause for BCAC. So, like many of you, I grew up, born and raised here in Berkshire County. My family's been from this community for many, many generations. My great-grandparents worked at Sprague Electric, and my grandmother worked at General Electric, and we've all seen what the change in the economy here and the economic downturn and what that has done to our community, and nowhere is the economic downturn and those effects more dramatic than what we see happening in courts here in Berkshire County. I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I was inspired to get into criminal law really because I was interested in racial justice. And we, communities of color, for many, many generations have been talking about how the criminal justice system is unfair to people of color. And I worked in Florida representing people on death row and decided I wanted to raise my family here. And when I returned here and started working in the courts here in Berkshire County, I was really shocked by what I was seeing happening in our community. And I just really hit home for me that the things about the criminal justice system that have really been unfair to people of color have similarly not worked very well for people who are living in poverty. And it inspired me to get involved in politics to make structural change. I think that is what is needed in the criminal justice system. If the system was a business, it would have gone under a long time ago, because we really, the way that we've been prosecuting and punishing people doesn't get to the underlying reasons as to why people get involved in the system in the first place. And for me, the people that I've represented really end up in the system because of untreated or undiagnosed mental health problems, issues that often lead to issues with substance abuse. You see a lot of crimes of despair, which comes from a lack of economic opportunity. So many of my clients would tell me, oh, they lived in their grandmother's houses. That was very, very common because their grandparents were the last generation that could really afford to purchase a home. And that was very personal for me because, I come from a hardworking family. My parents had me when they were very young. My dad was a carpenter. My mom took care of us during the day, and she went to work at night. And people in my family have struggled with substance abuse and been able to get good treatment, and it really changed my life and changed my family's life. But I saw a whole generation of people in our community who didn't have access to those kinds of opportunities, which informed my vision for what the district attorney's office can do and can be here in Berkshire County. And I really see my role as being twofold. First of all, absolutely prosecuting and putting dangerous people behind bars, 100%. I'm building a very strong team to do that. But so much of what we see in the courts are people that are not dangerous or struggling and need help. So what I envision really is structural change. And we're going to do that by working together with our state delegation, municipal leaders, community organizations, to really have a new approach to criminal justice and to really work together to get to the underlying reasons as to why people get involved in the system in the first place. One of the things I was asked to address in particular is the role of the relationship between poverty and domestic violence and our criminal justice system. So, in Berkshire County, what we have seen, there have been 6 women from Berkshire County that have been murdered in domestic violence homicides in the last 4 years. This is a truly shocking statistic. And my intention really is to work with people like the Elizabeth Freeman Center, work with our electeds, work with people from all across the community to have a aggressive community-wide response to the domestic violence problem we see here in Berkshire County. So I will turn it over to my fellow friend here, Mayor Bernard, and I look forward to talking about these issues more during the comments section.
Thanks very much. Like the district attorney, I was born and raised in North Adams in the northern Berkshires. My parents were public school educators, and I'm going to come back to that point, but it really is a critical piece of everything that we're talking about today. Education doesn't appear on our priority list, but it has been a common theme. We heard it in the first presentation. It was a consistent message among our state delegation, and it's a critical point of how we address what Senator Hines and others have noted is a structural and a systemic problem. But before I get to there, I want to start with a different point. It's cold this morning. It's extremely cold. Really, it's kind of the first snap of this new year. And as the Representative Barrett mentioned, we saw significant cuts in the state of Massachusetts to our LIHEAP program, to our heating assistance program. I believe that the number was something in the range of $11 million. And I don't know exactly what portion of that translates to the people here in the Berkshires, but it's a loss at a time when the need is growing, the number of applications, and the ability to stretch those funds is ever more critical. When the Eagle reported that article back in December, heating oil was sitting at something around $2.81 a gallon, and it's at the top, or for that time last year, in December of 17, it was up around $3.12, so that's 32 cents. So more people, increased costs, fewer resources, and that forces people to make tough and critical decisions, because when you don't have access to these programs, whether it's LIHEAP or any other assistance program, you're forced to make those tough choices. Food or heat, transportation or work. And that's the trap that so many people find themselves in. So when we look at the booklet that everybody got, the thing that really gives me hope is those last couple pages where we see this incredible, and I would say probably incomplete and always growing list of agencies. And I know that there are people and practitioners in the room today who represent a number of these. There are others who are standing shoulder to shoulder with us in this fight. And that's one of the things that gives us a cause for hope. We have a great network. We have a great team of partners and collaborators that we work together with. What's hard about that is for the person who needs that service, those services, that list might not be easily accessible. That list might be daunting to them. Knowing which door to go into to start a conversation, to be directed where you need to go to meet the need you have, might be confusing. It might be very hard, particularly when we then look and compare that against this list and realize that this is the foundation of an intersectional list of needs and priorities. So the person, the family who needs workforce development services in order to get a job, to build a career, to get started, may not be able to compete for that because the transportation system is not in a position to allow them to do that right now. The ability to have access to affordable childcare may prevent them from being able to work because they don't have someone to care for their children. They may be in recovery. They may not have access to good housing. So these things all work together. So how we work together to coordinate and collaborate these efforts becomes ever more critical. And that takes me back to where I started and to our school system and to the 2 minutes I have left. Thank you, Jackie. And these needs translate into our students and into our youngest and most vulnerable population, those who are coming in hungry, those who are coming in on a cold day without a winter coat, who may have been coming from a home where there wasn't heat when the cold snap comes in. And all of these things affect learning readiness. It affects their preparation, their ability to be present, to learn, to succeed, and to develop. And then what that also does is it puts a burden on our educators. It puts a burden on our educators to be food service providers, trauma specialists, clinicians. And these are great people. I would put the North Adams educators toe-to-toe with any in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and know that they are competitive and they are leaders. But we're also asking a lot of them. And asking a lot of them with the best intentions of the world, but not necessarily enough training. And so I tout the collaboration we have, but I also know that it is precarious because of the risks we face from things like the government shutdown and what that means down the line for our meal programs and our abilities to really meet the needs and to serve our most vulnerable populations who are the ones that we have to secure the future for. And so I say that the call to action of the charge is we have to get collaboration right, and the thing is, in the Berkshires, among those of us here, among those of us who are allies, we do it, and we will continue to do it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and feel honored to be invited to participate in this very important conversation. I promise to honor the timekeeper. But I'm going to start with, I'm going to take this in 3 segments: raising awareness, what's Pittsfield doing, where are we going, and finally I'll just close with some of my concerns and observations, and so hopefully that'll be a framework for my remarks. So I too want to thank BCAC for inviting us all to this forum and raising this awareness and sounding this alarm. And over the last 6 months, I have had the privilege of spending some time immersing myself in the work of the Bridges Out of Poverty Working Cities Challenge. So in 2016, the city of Pittsfield, along with 4 other communities in Massachusetts, were selected to be a Working Cities community. And we are funded by the Boston Fed. Later on, Alyssa Costa will present some interesting information about the cliff effect. But also what they have been doing is providing opportunities for the rest of us to get ourselves familiar with what it means to be impoverished. And this has been a truly enlightening experience for me. We recently had the city's entire senior management team spend 2 full days with nationally recognized trainers to introduce us to these models of Bridges Out of Poverty. And I want to just tell you the thing that has stayed with me since beginning this work with Bridges Out of Poverty is the distinction between the way that essentially the 3 economic classes live. how we have all the same concept of time, but we live time differently. We all have financial resources, we all have money to obviously varying degrees, but we think about it differently and act on it differently. And this has been a profound, eye-opening lesson for me, and I'm extremely grateful for it because it will evolve the way I think about the role of local government in the lives of every person. And we tend to be a little bit rigid in government. We're kind of a bureaucracy. We get stuck in our ways. And having this this training, this Bridges Out of Poverty training, has really forced me to think about how can we do things differently to be more responsive to people in our city that struggle. And as has been noted, this is an entrenched problem that has been with us for decades. And if we don't look at ways to do this differently, we're just going to continue to have the same result where our brothers and sisters are struggling. So I'm really hopeful that your organizations and business leaders in our community will take advantage of BCAC and Bridges Out of Poverty to bring this kind of training right where your feet are, because that's where we can make the most difference. So what's Pittsfield doing? What are we doing as a local government to support people who are in poverty? So Pittsfield is an entitlement company. We're a city, not a company. Not at all a company. So anyway, we're an entitlement community. We are eligible for community development block grant funds, which is federal money. And we have seen a significant decline in that funding, not just recently, but it's been nibbled away at for 20 to 25 years, and that really affects our ability to serve people who are in our under-resourced neighborhoods. We use that money to help people rehabilitate their houses, to replace a furnace when it blows up and they can't afford to replace it, goes to the heating issue. So we also provide funding for human service agencies. You know, one of the things that we care about in the city of Pittsfield is making sure that the agencies that are service providers and resources for people in poverty have some small amount of investment of city dollars. It's not a lot of money, but we want to be your partner, and we do that by putting our money behind you. We are working on housing initiatives, and we'll be making some announcements on that. Aside from our block grant housing rehabilitation program, we're going to be launching a housing initiative with some state partners and local lenders that will give people more resources to repair their roofs, replace their windows, fix their porch, and also to give people opportunities for home ownership, which is bringing people up, lifting everyone up. And of course, we're working on our economic future. You know, we're going to have 300 new jobs in the city of Pittsfield. This is an opportunity for people to find employment, and we look forward to welcoming Wayfair and the opportunities that they're bringing to our community. So those are some of the things that Pittsfield's doing. I'm happy to elaborate on that more when we get to the Q&A. I want to just close on some things that concern me and things that I've observed. It often feels like, especially lately, that the federal government is not with us. But we are really lucky in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to have Congressman Neal, Senator Warren, and Senator Markey, and others representing us. They do believe in us, and they do believe in the principles of everyone ought to have access to opportunity and prosperity. So they do stand with us. The block grant funding is a key piece of this. They have advocated for our communities every single year during federal budget planning. The shutdown, Mayor Bernard has talked about the cuts to the heating programs. We're very concerned about how the shutdown is going to affect our ability to provide free breakfast and lunch for every single child in the Pittsfield Public Schools. We're doing it now, and we have to keep doing it, and the shutdown is threatening that. Workforce training. I have been privileged to be appointed to the Mass Higher State Workforce Board. I plan to be part of the and team of people that will build policies to address some of these issues. Pittsfield's unemployment rate is only 3.6%. It's fairly low. People are working, but they're still poor. And if we don't have workforce training programs so they can advance their skills and have access to higher earning power, we aren't doing our jobs. And I really want to take this message to the Mass Higher State Workforce Board. Housing initiatives are key to making sure our neighborhoods are stabilized. When I look at this list of things, order of importance, there's an interesting intersection that I want to mention to you today. Every one of those things matters to people in poverty. They struggle with it all the time. Every one of those things also matters to our business leaders. They struggle with getting employees to their places of work. They want their employees to have the access to housing. Recruitment is challenged when our communities don't have adequate housing. So how do we soften our business leaders around these efforts and join our advocacy?
Victor, I'm going to ask you to take about 30 seconds to finish up. Just
I'm closing in. I really just want to close with just a thought that, and a personal story. Poverty does a lot of damage, and we see it all around us. And the thing that hurts my heart the most, though, is that it steals people's joy. So my husband and I were participating in the Pittsfield 4th of July parade this past year, and we have a brand new bakery on Tyler Street, and it was open. And my husband and I went in to check this new place out, and there was this young mother with two little daughters standing there looking at all the treats in the bakery case. And my husband heard the little girls, can we get that pumpkin cookie? Can we have this? And my husband heard this young mother say, I'm sorry, we don't have any money. So my husband was telling me the story, and the idea that mother couldn't bring joy to those kids, and those kids couldn't have the joy of that pastry or that cookie, was heart-wrenching. I found out afterwards that my husband quietly purchased treats for those little girls. So I love him dearly for having the kind of conscience and heart to do that sort of thing, but it steals joy. So we've got to do better for the people of our cities.
I want to thank our public elected officials for coming to share their ideas and what they're working on, and I want to open this up to the audience for questions. I do want to say, if you have a question for a particular elected official, please address it to that official. It's open. Please just pose the question. And I do want to encourage our students who are here from today, from Williams, also to share your questions. Your voices are really valued here. So, questions from the audience. Yes. Sneak back.
So I personally just want to say a personal congratulations to being here. Congratulations. But my statement today is rather for our city's mayors. So I want to thank you guys for recognizing the importance of senior centers in your communities. I'm willing to bet that most people in the audience truly don't understand what senior centers do. We're not just social programs and places to gather. Your senior center directors and senior center staffs, as well as several others in Berkshire County, are addressing every one of these issues. So through your direct support, you are attacking these challenges. But I feel like there needs to be more in Berkshire County to help our neighboring communities who don't have the population base to support the municipally funded senior center directors and staff and social workers to create similar programming, to put pressure on the senior centers who are able to provide that funding, to extend a hand to our neighbors to do more regionalized senior center development services. So I look forward to being able to work with both North Adams and Pittsfield in the future as the Adams Senior Center Director to see how we might be able to share with our neighbors and do more programming to address some of these challenges in a different way.
Thanks. I want to applaud you for your projection skills. I'm officially jealous. Mayor Tyler, Bernard, Bob, if you'd like to respond briefly.
I do want to respond, and I want to really thank both Vin and you for mentioning the plight of our seniors, because it's easy to be heartfelt for parents and children in poverty, and seniors are experiencing some struggles of their own. And this idea of regionalizing senior center services is very interesting. The funding component of it is going to be critical, and unless we see either the individual communities providing additional funding for senior services or some sort of a state mechanism, we've got a great, beautiful senior center in the city of Pittsfield that provides a lot of resources, and it really is an opportunity maybe to share with our neighbors. We can't do it by ourselves, though. Funding is going to be key to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and thanks for bringing that point up there. I appreciate it. We also have a great senior center in North Adams, and in fact, that's one of the reasons that previously the previous administration made a decision to use CDBG money to help update and modernize and do some infrastructure work at the senior center to continue making sure that it's a solid center for the community. I also want to just acknowledge something that Representative Farley-Bouvier talked about, which is the age-friendly movement. And one of the things that the North Adams Senior Center organized back in the fall was a really good conversation with age-friendly about the sort of senior virtual village idea. So it's not a true collaboration. It doesn't come with funding, but it's that grassroots peer-to-peer networking piece of building connections and programming and advocacy among seniors that's critical in building that network and helping to bring those communities in where they're not fully served.
Very good.
I'm not going to be left out, Erica. The district attorney's office is part of the Triad program. I think there's a really important role for my office to play in protecting vulnerable seniors, both from kinds of financial crimes, but also, we have seniors who are being taken advantage of, seniors that are abused. So we really want to work to get into every part of the community to help to protect our seniors. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you very much. Other questions for the audience? I want to prioritize folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Are there others who have not spoken? Please, if you have a question, throw your hand up high. It'll be a little difficult to see. Okay, I guess we'll go down here.
This is very quick. In looking through the list, I noticed the absence of the visiting nurses and Berkshire elder. There's an entire organization for elder services. So you might notice how your thoughts tie in with these, and exactly, particularly the Berkshire elder services liaisons with the centers, etc.
Thank you. Other questions?
I probably don't need that either.
Let me get you on the mic just because it'll get in the recording.
Okay. This might be, go with it. So I'm Chris McBack, and I'm the president and CEO for the Green Center, and I identify myself only for the purpose of talking about workforce and workforce development. Because I can tell you, for me right now, is a leader of a non-for-profit organization in Berkshire County, there is, my biggest challenge is around workforce and workforce development. And I recognize that there's a lot being done within the county, but for us even, it's a statewide issue, because what I can pay people is dependent upon what I get reimbursed by my state contracts and third-party payment, which is primarily Mass Health. All right, we compete with all of the state agencies locally, and so therefore it makes us, we're very challenged to continue to sustain our programs and services and meet ever-increasing need for those living with mental illness and addiction. So I just want to make that comment.
Thank you. Can I just ask you a quick question about that, Chris, if I may? So when you say you're competing, do you mean that you're competing and that your contracts are reimbursed at a lower rate than other parts of our state?
What I'm stating is that we compete with state agencies because of the salaries and benefits that state agencies can provide, and I applaud them for that.
Yeah.
I mean, DCF, if they were here, they had to leave, would tell you that clinicians get trained at the Green Center because we provide really good supervision and support and training, and then they go to work for DCF. So my point being is that they're able to, benefits all the way around are much better. And I know my challenges are really, I don't think that they're a whole lot different than other nonprofit providers in Berkshire County.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments in the audience? Throw your hands up high, guys.
I just want to underscore the census of 2020, and that Governor Baker has proposed, because of family and everything else, that we get $12 per senior by 2020. And that's continually risen in the last 5 years. And so it's very critical that we count all of our citizens, because what we will be losing or gaining will depend on our support through the census, because when we get that appropriation, it'll be very important. So the formula grant is extremely important. We get it every year, and it goes a long way to help what's happening in our senior centers and our senior population. So please support the census.
So let me ask our elected officials, would any of you like to briefly speak to what you're doing in terms of the 2020 census?
So I'm going to be part of the planning session coming up in the next couple of weeks, so that our city officials who will be partnering with federal census takers will be prepared to be as helpful and encouraging around completing the census. I'm really glad it keeps getting raised, because it is only done every 10 years. This is the federal census, not that local annual census that you get that really only keeps you as a registered voter. This is the federal census. So we've got to encourage everyone, and there's reasons why people don't want to fill out the census. They have anxieties about things, and they feel the federal census may be opening them up to some sort of examination or interrogation. We've got to reassure people that that's not what's happening, that by answering the census, they're helping the community with federal funding and programs for their families. So this is a really important message that some of the nonprofits might want to take back to the people that you serve.
Thank you.
I would say we're in much the same position. One of the things that I know the outgoing city clerk in North Adams and the new clerk are focused on is getting ready for and getting the census right, and again, we'll be doing our planning conversations around that.
Thank you both for your proactivity on this issue. Other questions or comments from the audience? Yes, down there. Tripping over my own feet.
Thanks very much. My name is Robert Sykes. I have been affiliated with a program called Volunteers in Medicine in Great Barrington for about 5 years now. It's nothing shy of a miracle in terms of the people that it serves and the professionals who come in and day out to volunteer their services to make sure that the citizens are healthy. And I would invite you to come down and take a look at the model, because there should be a volunteers in medicine program in each and every community. And there's no reason why it can't be done. We don't have to ask permission anymore. We have to take responsibility, given what's going on in the country at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of you like to respond, or?
Volunteers in Medicine is a wonderful model for our community, because we do have a lot of really talented people here in Berkshire County, particularly people who maybe come to retire, and it's a great way to take advantage of those skill sets and to make them available to people throughout the community. I have visited volunteers in medicine, and I think that they could really play an important role in my plans to divert people from the criminal justice system, because what we see is we see people who need health care, really. And so, you know, that's the kind of model that I would like to see happening throughout the county, and I would definitely like to be taking advantage of that kind of program.
Robert, I'll just say I'd love to connect with you after the panel.
Thank you, and I think we maybe have time for one more brief comment or question. So I had up over there first, so I'm gonna swing back over here.
D.A. Harrington, you had talked really eloquently throughout your campaign about domestic violence, which was, you know, very important to me. I work at Community Legal Aid in Pittsfield. We have an office in North Adams. And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more specifically about the district attorney's office's role now and how that relates to domestic violence policies.
Well, you know, my approach to domestic violence, I intend to be really two-pronged. The first of all is aggressive prosecution of people who are abusers, and part of that, I want to go to a vertical prosecution model, which means that on all of our cases, and particularly our domestic violence cases, it would be the same ADA, the same victim advocate that is working on the case through the life of the case. And some people might be surprised to know that doesn't actually happen right now. There are different people that handle the prosecutions in district court at different levels. And so to me, that's going to be a first step that we can take to really improve the advocacy there. The other piece, though, is about prevention. And I do very strongly believe that domestic violence can be prevented through proactive activity. There's a program called the Domestic Violence Intervention Program that's being used by other district attorneys across the state. I would bring that program here to Berkshire County, and it will be, you know, it's people who are trained throughout the community to recognize the signs that somebody is at risk of being an abuser or being a victim, and take steps to intervene before violence occurs. And those kinds of programs have been shown to be very effective, and it's something that we need to have here in our community, obviously. I also want to be partnering with local agencies and organizations to bring in more grant funding to help to provide more resources for prevention programs, because, you know, we all know, like, that should really have true public safety. It's about preventing people from being harmed. It's not just about prosecuting people after tragedy has occurred.
Thank you. Well, we're going to draw this section of our forum to a close. I want to thank our district attorney and our two mayors for their time and all of you for your engagement. And finally, I'd like to encourage all of you to keep the conversations going. Please don't feel like this is a once in a year or, God forbid, a once in a lifetime opportunity. Go to your local officials' offices, speak with them, bring your priorities forward. I now want to invite Melissa Costa up to the stage, Director of Working Cities Pittsfield, to speak with us about the Cliff Effect. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I'm with the Berkshire Bridges Working Cities Initiative here in Berkshire County. We're based in Pittsfield. It's a resident-driven initiative funded by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston in order to increase economic opportunity for all, regardless of background. And what that means is it's a collaboration. Many of our partners are in this room, including BCAC, to really figure out how to work together in different ways to address the systematic issues we're talking about today. And so one of the issues they want me to talk about is the cliff effect. And it's a long-standing systematic issue that we're going to need to address address if we want to lift people out of poverty, if we want folks to be able to take advantage of jobs at Wayfair. So I want to talk to you about Christina's dilemma. Christina could be anybody in any county, in any state, but this is Berkshire County. And Christina's been living in poverty. She's a single mom with 2 children. One is in preschool and one is in elementary school. She was unemployed while attending community college part-time to receive her associate's degree. So kudos to her for working hard to get ahead. She received SNAP benefits and housing support along with cash assistance and child support income. After graduation, she was super excited. She accepted a job as a medical technician, 40 hours a week, $18 an hour. Right? Super exciting. But what happened to Christine when she did that? Suddenly she had to pay for rent. She lost SNAP benefits by more than half. After-school childcare costs became a burden. And she wasn't able to afford the sharp increases in her expenses. So you can see this chart here, the differences between her benefits when she was not working and receiving benefits. And what happens even when she jumped to $18 an hour, which we all consider to be a fantastic living wage. But according to the MIT living wage calculator, she would actually need more up to $30 an hour to really get ahead. So did Christina do the right thing for her family? Because what she did when she saw that is she quit her job. Because when you look at it, the hourly wage, and I did this before, our wages went up to $12 an hour, but it's pretty much the same. You start losing your benefits, and your benefits are more than your increase in wage. And this can happen to someone like Christine. It can happen to someone on disability who suddenly their wage goes up to $12 an hour, and because they can only make a certain amount of money, they actually have to work less in order to maintain their benefits. Now, is Christina lazy? No. Right? She went to college, she worked hard to get ahead. She did everything that we tell her she's supposed to do, and she still can't do it. Because the system is developed to create the outcomes that we get. We're not doing cost of living increases on our public benefits. This is a systematic issue. This isn't a matter of Christina working harder. Christina and tons of people all over the country and here in Berkshire County are making the right decision for their family. They're not being lazy, they're trying to figure out how to survive and meet their needs. So if the policies and resources can better be aligned, right? So if we could figure out how to close that gap, that we see here, that $2,000 gap that she gets, we can have a pathway to success for individuals in our community. The climb to self-sufficiency is very steep, and we need to understand that when we're working with the populations that we do, and we need to understand that there's a lot more to this. So even if you get a raise of 2 to 3%, which is what's been happening every year, if the cost of living stays exactly the same, it would take Christina 20 years to make it to a living wage. Now that's 20 years without a medical setback that costs her a lot of money or something going wrong that sets her back. And we understand the depth and complexities of the communities that we work with. In all their interlocking challenges. And that's what Bridges Out of Poverty helps us understand, and that's why we're working with this on the systematic issues. At a starting wage, even over 10 years, she would need 12% increases in her yearly salary to make up this difference. It is unsustainable. We cannot expect individuals to lift themselves out of poverty without changing this. So my call to action to you is to think about how we can advocate for this, because this is a patchwork of federal and state systems that aren't working with the thought of what Christina's situation is or anyone else in that situation. So we're never going to get to where we want to in eliminating poverty if we don't address these systematic issues. No matter how hard Christina works, no matter how much our mayors work and our state legislators work, if we don't fix this. So with that, Berkshire Bridges right now has funding for Pittsfield, and so we're doing our Bridges Out of Poverty work to understand how we can shift the way we do our work in order to address systematic issues. They're not just public policy issues, they're policies within our agencies, within every system that can sometimes work against what Christina and others like her are trying to achieve. So we need to keep looking both internally and externally about how we do our work. So I encourage you can reach out to me. My contact information is not in the book that you were handed, so if you want that, write that down, and we'd be happy to talk more. But the collaboration that we're talking about here, we know we can't do it alone. And so making sure that we're addressing the systematic issues together. You know, there were 200 people here today, so your voice really does matter, and we have people in power now in Congress that can start making noise about this.
Things that are happening in the northern Berkshires, and then some of the challenges. And I'm going to close out with a conversation about what I call the math of community building, why it's important and what it means for the work that we all do together. So we've all heard that great things are happening in the Berkshires and in the northern Berkshires in particular. The creative economy is a driver, brings 250,000 annual visitors to North Adams, generates $51 million in economic impact, and has catalyzed dozens of projects, including the NORAD Mill, the Tourists Resort, Greylock Works, and it's part of what's happening in the economy of the Berkshires that includes the Berkshire Innovation Center and the great news about Wayfair and Pittsfield. These things are bringing in jobs. They're adding to the employment opportunities that are here in manufacturing and other sectors. These are all good things, but we need to keep them all in perspective, because we know the benefits aren't equally felt. We all see it in the work that we do every day, and we know that the economy can't be defined just by those who visit and those who invest. We know that there are real struggles. We heard about them today, about the idea of the way that poverty steals joy, and the things that people are living with every day. So we have to recognize that poverty, the employment rate, the unemployment rate, the fact that we are an aging community, the challenges around educational attainment, the challenge of diversity, and the fact that in North Adams we are 92.5% white in a country that is changing. In a place where in rural areas growth is really being defined and driven by immigration. We're not talking enough about these issues. And the issue of addiction and the opioid epidemic. None of these are new issues, but they speak to the need for services as well as to the tradition of service that BCAC and all our partner agencies provide. So again, now I want to talk about how we address these challenges with what I call the math of community building. Yes, I did. And so now let me give you the formula. Given n nodes, if every node is connected to every other node except itself, the number of connections will be n times n minus 1 divided by 2. Let me break that down for you a little bit. Think about the dot, the 1 point, the single incident. Pay attention to this point, because I'm going to come back to it and I'm going to tell you why everything I'm about to tell you is wrong. But when you start with 1 point, you have no connections. The 2 points make a line. 3 points make a triangle with 3 connections. 4 points, you get 6 connections. So we can see that there's a clear network starting to form. When you get up to 10 points, 45 connections. At 20 points, you don't just have a network, you have a safety net, you have a web of connections. Now that's nice in theory, but what does it mean in practical terms? I've given this talk before, and the first time I did it was with the Northern Berkshire United Way, which happens to have 20 member agencies, of which one of them is BCAC. So that's what that network looks like when you apply real, practical people and organizations to it. But now I want to take it one step further. The seating capacity of Brooks Rogers is 250 people, and we were pretty close to full at the beginning. So, using this formula, 250 people generates 31,125 connections. That's the way that we're all connected. How the work we do is strengthened when we come together and we work together. That's over 30,000 ways to make a difference in this problem that we're solving. It may seem intractable, but there's over 31,000 solutions that we're going to work on together. That's daunting, but it's also inspiring. Because we know our work is amplified and we have good colleagues and good partners to share it with. But here's the thing, the formula is only a thought experiment. The network is real and it's vital and it's critical. The work is much more personal than that. It's based on personal connections, shared investment, compassion, and dedication. It's the dedication to fighting for our community every day, to bringing people to the table, to being the voice for the voiceless and creating space for the voiceless to make their voices heard. It's being tireless and persistent when you hear no, or not now, or not as much as you need or you asked for. And it's what helps us to have people to fight alongside, to celebrate with, and to commiserate with. That's the essence of the work we do. And every point in the network is built on that one-on-one connection. Individual stories, one person reaching out, one person providing service, one person making a decision to join us in our shared work. But here's where the formula breaks down. The notion that a single point is unconnected is mathematically true. But the reality could not be further from the truth, and we all know this. And for those of you who are from the Northern Berkshires, I'm about to prove it with a story. For all of those of you who don't know the person I'm about to talk about, I invite you to think of the people that you know who work in agencies, who work in the community, who are volunteers, who are unsung heroes, who are champions. Because the person I'm talking about is an exemplar of every one of them. So I want to tell you about a guy named Al Nelson. Al passed away last year, but his life was all about connection. From his military service, to his leadership in local media, to his work as the head of the Northern Berkshire United Way. It was about inspiring people and making them more connected. Now, I had the privilege to work with Al on the Northern Berkshire Community Coalition Board, so I know his story in particular. And at the time, I was working at MCLA. Whenever I saw Al, he'd say, "You got everything under control at the college?" And I was a fairly junior staff person at that point. Everything under control. But it wasn't just it wasn't just a good-natured joke. What Al was saying was a charge, and it's a charge that we all hear, and we all need to hear every day. It's the charge that says, what are you doing to make your community, however you define it, a better place? And that's where the formula comes together, where the head and the heart meet and unite. We form communities through our connections to one another. We build community through the service we provide. For me, that example is Al Nelson, but we all know someone who inspires us, who builds coalitions with us, and consensus simply by believing that doing it is natural, simple, and necessary. So I'm pleased to be a partner with you in the work that we started today, the work that all of you have been doing for so long, and the work that will continue, and the conversations that will continue from this point forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Bernard. That was awesome. I'm just going to say. Now, I'd like to invite Deb Leonsick back to the stage to close us out with a call to action. Thank you all for your participation and being with us today.
So I'm just going to say a few words, but please don't leave after my words, because we're going to go through this exercise again.
What I'm really hoping to see is if your opinion about the 8 or the top 5 priorities has changed after you've heard our local panels. As you've just heard, there's a significant amount of work being done on all fronts to combat poverty in our county. But as you've also heard, there's still so much work left to be done. This beautiful county strength is centered in its commitment to community and its ability to work together to solve problems. Now, personally, in my 30-something years of working in nonprofits, I've worked in 7 different counties in 3 different states, and I've never seen anything quite like Berkshire County. But true collaboration requires so much more than merely working together. It really requires a conscious effort to break down the barriers that keep us in our silos and focused on our individual interventions. So let's expand what we already do so well. Let's expand and strengthen our collaborations and make that commitment today. In your packet, you have a list of all agencies and the state representatives and the local leaders and all their contact information. Our challenge to you is to find an agency or a delegate or a local leader that you want to work together to accomplish an objective and that you haven't worked with before. Let us strengthen our connections and thereby strengthen the effectiveness not only of the safety net, but of the pathways to opportunities for our neighbors. Tom said it so succinctly. And poverty is really one of the society's most complex problems. No one agency or government can solve it on their own. And it is not an agency problem to solve. It belongs to the community, and it's going to take the entire community to solve it. We want to thank you for your attendance and your attention to this important issue, and for coming out on this frigid January morning. We hope that you have been inspired to begin new collaborations and relationships with your colleagues, run with new ideas, and show the rest of the state how true collaboration is done here in the Berkshires. Thank you.
So just as a final little piece, you see the final poll reflected here. So before you leave, just take a moment to, once again, in light of all the wonderful information that you heard this morning, we're really blessed here in Berkshire County to have the engagement of our legislative delegation and our elected officials. So go ahead and answer this question. We'll put the results on our Facebook page and on our web page, so and you'll be able to access that. So thank you again, and have a